JBL, John Layfield. John, how are you today?
It's great to be here this morning.
Appreciate the time. And listen, a lot of talk is going on about the Crown Jewel that's taking place November 2nd. And I know you were recently on Fox. If you don't mind, if we'll play the clip of what was said on Fox.
WWE wrestling people, they're getting ready to hold another big event in Saudi Arabia. And this is a big one coming up next month, November 2nd. Many of the stars have told Sports Illustrated that they feel uneasy about it following the disappearance of the columnist Jamal Khashoggi. Right, John is with us. He's a former WWE wrestling champion. I mean, you wouldn't know it now, but they're a champ. Here you go. It's going to take place, though, isn't it?
From what I understand, yes. The idea is that the WWE is going to go there. Right now, the official line is that they're monitoring the situation. My personal opinion is that they should go. I think the only way you promote change, look at what we did with Cuba. You isolate a country, all you do is impoverish that country. You want to promote change. WWE went to Abu Dhabi. They had the first women's match that had ever happened in the Middle East. The crowd was chanting in English, "This is change." And for these senators to come out and bash the WWE on this, I've spent 7 Christmases in Iraq and Afghanistan with the WWE. I was with the WWE, the first group to go down and visit the Twin Towers while they were still burning and bodies were pulling out. We were the first group on 9/13 to have a mass gathering right after 9/11. People didn't know what was going to happen. For these guys to hide behind their patriotism and their show flag waving, to me, I think is to try to improve their abysmal approval ratings. To me, is wrong. WWE has been at the forefront of change, and you want to change Saudi Arabia, you send something like WWE there.
So, I mean, first of all, strong comments, and I like what you said about change. If there is going to be a change, well, you have to make a change. You have to make something happen, and that's obviously something you believe when it comes to the WWE.
Yeah, and you look at what happens when you don't do anything. You look at Cuba. Cuba, for over 50 years, over half a century, has just impoverished an entire country because nobody wanted to deal with them. It's mainly because the Cuban vote is a swing vote in a swing state of Florida, so politically nobody wants to mess with Cuba. And you look at something like Russia, or you look at something like China, where you actually allow free markets to go in there, and you haven't seen the change that I think we in the Western world would probably like. Still have a bit of a dictatorship. Some people would say more than a bit of a dictatorship in Russia and in China, but you're seeing change come there. And so I think staying away from Saudi Arabia, there's macroeconomic reasons to not stay away from Saudi Arabia, huge macroeconomic reasons right now in the world. But to me, as far as if you want to do something to promote change, you allow business and free markets to go in there.
John, from the business end, obviously, I understand you. Put your pro wrestler hat on for 1 second. Let's say you were still with the company. Let's say you were still on the road 300 days a year. Would you have a problem right now going to Saudi Arabia?
Oh, yeah, because I wouldn't want to fly that far. Not because of Saudi Arabia. I wouldn't want to get an airplane. We once did a tour. We almost had that plane crash. So we went in Russia, where we went to Seoul, we went to Singapore, and then Perth, Australia, back to back. It was the worst trip of my life. In fact, right before that plane almost crashed, Ric Flair looked at me and said, "This is the worst flight I've ever been on." And he's been in a crash where somebody was crippled. So, yeah, look, I digress. And I digress on purpose because, look, if you're one of the performers, I can see not wanting to go for travel reasons. I can't speak to any of their motives as far as what they believe about what happened to Mr. Khashoggi in the Turkish embassy.
John, let me ask you this. If you're one of the boys or girls there right now and you feel very strongly about this, and in your heart you're saying to yourself, I just can't do it. I don't feel right about the situation. Don't wrestlers as independent contractors have the right to stand up and let the boss know, hey, I just can't do this one?
Absolutely. And I want to make the point here that I'm not the company spokesperson on this. People said I'm towing the company line. I don't even know what the hell the company line is. I was asked a question on Fox about this on Stuart Varney's show yesterday. I was also asked this morning on Maria Bartiromo's show the same thing about WWE going, in my opinion. This is only my opinion about going. And Bubba, to your question, yes, absolutely. You have a right not to go. And I feel very confident the WWE will not insist anybody go. Certain people didn't want to go to Iraq. Now, it's for different reasons. They felt like their safety might be in jeopardy, but certain people didn't want to go to Iraq. We went there so many years in a row. There were people that didn't necessarily agree with the 9/13 show 2 days after 9/11 in Houston. And Vince made it very clear. If you don't want to be here, not an issue. There's no repercussions. There's not going to be any fallback from this. That is simply your choice. And I think that would be the same with Saudi Arabia.
Do you think it's fair? They've been kind of beaten up publicly the last few days because of the decision to keep this show going on November 2nd. Do you think that's fair or unfair?
I think it's horribly unfair. I mean, you look at what's going on in the world right now. Russia has this Novichok poison. They're the ones that have ever manufactured it. They obviously killed this guy in the UK. They poisoned another. They've several guys have been poisoned. It's obviously Russia. You still have the World Cup there, and people are not boycotting the World Cup. Look at what's going on in China. And by the way, 65 reporters last year were killed globally around the globe right now. You know, not to diminish what's happened. This is a direct violation of the Magnitsky Act, which it says that the USA is going to have to put some type of sanctions upon Saudi Arabia, which they should. They should deal with this issue. But you look at what's going on with the Uyghurs in the Xinjiang province in China, what's going on with the Tibetans in China, the human rights violations. Yeah, you go to the Olympics there and people say, oh, this is so great. Everybody's going to China. There's human rights violations everywhere. And I'm not diminishing that. And I'm not diminishing the fact that you should deal with it. Look in the United States. We have incarceration. This isn't whataboutism, but this is a one-for-one correlation. We have a mass incarceration among minorities that is disproportionate to our population. It's a travesty what's going on with our mass incarceration, specifically of minorities. Yet we still do business in the United States. You can't change certain things by simply not going. WWE, from what I understand, has a contract with Saudi Arabia. WWE, to me, if you want to promote change, you let these guys go. Look what happened in Abu Dhabi when they're chanting, "This is change."
Yep.
You want to get something changed, you send sport. Look at what happened when Pee Wee Reese puts his arm around Jackie Robinson. That did more for race relations in the United States through sport. Now, I don't think the WWE is going there to change the world. I think they're going there to fulfill a contract. I think changing the world is something they tried to do with the presence that we had in Iraq of uplifting our soldiers and the armed forces. But to me, as seeing it from a macro picture, I think it's the right thing to do. And I think it is unfair, to get back to your question, the way WWE is treated, because no one else is treated like this. You didn't do this with the World Cup. You didn't do it with the Olympics, but all of a sudden you're going after WWE.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that they would not go after the World Cup, but they would go after the WWE?
I think it's easy fodder. I think it's hard going after the World Cup. It's hard going after the Olympics. I think what happened in 1980 when we boycotted the Olympics, the guy who trained me, Brad Rangans, would have been the gold medalist. You robbed him of becoming a gold medalist. You robbed a lot of young people of going to the Olympics. So people don't want to mess with that. But these senators that want to wrap themselves in this BS flag waving and all of a sudden become patriotic, want to go after somebody that has, so they can improve their approval ratings, is what it is. And so these senators go after WWE because it's red meat to their base.
John, you've spent many, many years there. You've gotten close with Vince. You know how he thinks on a business-wise, outside of the ring and inside of the ring. Do you think it's ever been a consideration for him to back off of the show?
Oh, absolutely. I think he considers all options. Vince likes people that dissent from his point of view, and Vince likes hearing that. He doesn't like yes men around him. And so I think Vince certainly looked at this option. I don't know what he's going to decide. I don't know if he's going to decide to go, if he's not going to decide to go. My belief is that they probably go, but that's just my opinion, and my belief is that they should go. But yes, I think he's considered that.
What about just the public perception? And I'll just bring something up, and this is on a much smaller scale. But we saw it at this past WrestleMania they had the Battle Royal for Fabulous Moolah. And there was pushback because of accusations that were thrown out there, which a lot of people have come forward and say were completely untrue. But because of public perception and because of some flack from fans, they took the name Fabulous Moolah off that Battle Royal. So obviously they look, and like you said, they consider all sides. Do you think maybe not cancel, but maybe postpone, put a pause on what's going to take place November 2nd until more facts come out, until maybe things cool off or the perception change? Do you think that's an option?
I think everything is an option. I'm not sure if that's a good option. I don't think this is going to cool off. I mean, I think we have a real problem right now in the world, and this has nothing to do with WWE, with Saudi Arabia. And because of what happened with this disappearance and MBS, and Saudi Arabia is our only ally in the Middle East. We lose Saudi Arabia, we lose the Middle East. And here's the problem. You have China just bought 5% of Saudi Aramco, which is their big oil company that's a nationalized oil company. China is trying to make the renminbi, called the Petro Yuan, the reserve currency of the world. If we lose Saudi Arabia because of sanctions or by avoiding them. They're going to China. They're going to Russia. Russia just sold the S-400, $5 billion worth to India, also to Turkey. That is the competition for the Patriot missile system. There's an arms and an infrastructure race going on in the world right now. And we really risk losing that to the rest of the world. So there's a greater good here. This $110 billion that President Trump signed as soon as he got into office with arms sale, that's 500,000 jobs in America. So do you take away, and this is a greater good argument, and I'm not sure of the answer, but I know with a question, do you take away 500,000 jobs? Do you allow China to establish dominance in the Middle East and Iran because of this reporter who was killed, and it hurts America long term? And that's the greater good argument. I don't know the answer to that. I have my opinions.
Yeah. It's hard to answer something like that. It's almost impossible to answer something.
Are you
like
sure you're a pro wrestler, John? What? You're entirely too smart. Like, the IQ of this show has never been higher than it is right now.
Damn it, man. Stop it, Bubba. You're a very smart guy. It's funny because the smart guys always play dumb guys. It's true. Heels were always the good guys, and the dumb guys that played dumb guys were really smart guys.
Hey, let me go back to wrestling for 1 second. Smackdown 1000 last night. You were an intricate part of that brand. Were you invited? How come you weren't there?
I don't know why I wasn't there. I'll give you one reason. I was debuting a new show at Fox, and so I was working. But I don't know. I don't have, let's say I'm a company spokesperson. I'm not a company anything, Bubba. I wish I could have been there, but I was glad doing the debut show on Fox, a new Bulls and Bears show. I think it's a pretty cool show. It's a good idea. Hopefully it works. I'm supposed to go to Tribute to the Troops coming up in December, and that's all I know.
Tell us and our listeners about some of your fondest SmackDown memories.
I'll tell you, the match I had with Eddie Guerrero in the cage, we went over the rehearsal that morning, and Eddie jumped off the cage, and he missed the landing area by about 5 feet, and he said, "I'm good." I said, "What do you mean you're good?" That would have killed me. And I said, "It literally could have killed me." He goes, "I think I can do it live." I said, "You couldn't do it in practice when there was no pressure on you." He goes, "I'm better live." I said, "Oh my God." So when I'm laying there, I'm thinking, this could be the end. This could be it. And sure enough, he hit me perfect. Everything on my right side went asleep. I wondered if he had paralyzed me for a minute. It was such a freaking impact. And slowly it came back to me. But wrestling with Eddie Guerrero, the Undertaker, it's just, SmackDown was such a fun show. And it still is. Like, I'm talking about my era as far as being part of that show. I love that show. I thought it was so much fun.
When you were involved in SmackDown, was there a competition between SmackDown and Raw?
Absolutely, yeah. We kept up with pay-per-view buys. We kept up with ratings. At one point, we were beating Raw, and that was a big deal to us. Yeah, there was a huge competition between the two. It was very healthy.
John, one of the things that we talk about on the show is the ability for the wrestlers, the guys and the girls, to go out there and quote unquote get over right now. It seems like they're a little bit more handcuffed. Do you think that there is the same opportunity and ability for guys to get over the way me and you experienced back in the day, or do you think it's a little too micromanaged right now?
Look, my understanding, and I haven't been around the locker room for over a year, and when I was there as an announcer, I wasn't in the locker room. I was busy getting notes and trying to figure out what was going on with matches, so I don't have a good feeling of what's going in the locker room, so I'm not sure it's even fair for me to answer. I'll do my best to answer the question. I think they are micromanaged to a bit, but I think if guys want to do something to get over, look at Dean Ambrose. I remember Dean Ambrose would do all kinds of crazy stuff off skit and off script and do all kinds of mannerism, and he came back one time and Vince was joking. He goes, "Show some personality." It was a joke, tongue in cheek, but Vince loved it. So I think there's an opportunity there to stand out. There may even be an opportunity more to stand out now than even with us, because all of us tried to. And now you have guys who are just happy to have a job, from my understanding, a lot of them, some of them not so, and they're just kind of conforming to the cookie cutter mold that they're given. Some guys have always done that. You always had guys back in the 90s. You had guys just happy to be there. They would not do anything out of the norm, and they'd be around a while and then they'd be gone.
How about just fans now in 2018? When you first came up in pro wrestling, and usually the fans they would boo the heels and cheer the faces. In 2018, it's so up in the air. I mean, how difficult would that be being a pro wrestler and really not understanding the character because the perception is so different with the fans.
I think it'd be easier now than ever because of social media. But the guy's got to stay in character. We stayed in character 24/7. People would think you're a horrible person, but you don't want to see a guy at an airport and smile and be friendly. And look, this is an old school mentality. I get that. People don't like that anymore, but it's what we did. And you don't want them coming to the arena saying, hey, I met that guy. He's actually a really good guy, and telling everybody around him, because that's what they will do. You want people to think that you're this bad guy. So you live that character 24/7. I would see these guys who are heels, and then right after doing some dastardly deed on Monday Night Raw or SmackDown, they quote a Bible verse and say how great it is to help people on their social media. I'm going, you're killing yourself. Because these same people who follow you on social media are the same ones that watch you on Monday Night Raw and SmackDown, and they're the ones out there saying, he's really a good guy. I like him. He's a good heel. If somebody tells you you're a good heel, you have failed miserably. If you're selling T-shirts as a heel and you're selling them, you failed miserably. If you have a heel section, you failed miserably. You want to be the most socially irredeeming person on the planet when you walk out there. And if somebody cheers, I'll tell you a little story right quick. Kurt Hennig walks out one time against Hillbilly Jim, and some guy was sitting there going, Hillbilly, you suck. Kurt Hennig, I love you. Kurt spit his gum out and swatted it and hit the guy in the face with the gum. The guy looked at Kurt and goes, you suck. Kurt looked at Hillbilly and goes, perfect. That's a heel.
Amen. Because that's the way it's supposed to be. Because to listen to you say that, about the heels and, the selling the T-shirts and, I really like your work as a heel. Man, that's not, there should be no redeeming qualities about you as a heel. There should be no emotions of joy as a heel. And when I watched you or anybody else go out there, you didn't do anything to get a pop from the people or make them smile or laugh. You always wanted to be hated. And that's what wrestling should always be. Let me ask you this question, John. Talking about heels, do you see anybody out there today that even, scrapes the tip of the iceberg as being that kind of heel?
Yeah, I do. I think Randy Orton, he's obviously been around a long time. I think Randy Orton can be a terrific heel. I think Miz can be a terrific heel. Miz enjoys being a heel, and I think he's actually very good at it. People look at him and want to hate him. That's what you want. He came and visited me at Fox, and everybody goes, what a wonderful guy. But on air, he comes across as somebody that you want to just punch him.
Yeah.
You hate it. That's what a heel is. I remember we were in Europe one time, and this guy this big 6'6" guy did a drop kick and a Frankensteiner, and Fit Finlay said, he said, the crowd really loved that. He said, they popped huge. He goes, really getting over. He said, you're a heel. Don't ever do it again. And the guy never got it. He didn't make it in the business because of it. I had a T-shirt come out one time. I went to Vince. I said, what are you trying to kill me? He said, what are you talking about? I said, you put out a T-shirt of me? You want somebody buying my shirt and sitting in the crowd being a fan of me? And he said, I had no idea it was out. He goes, I'll cancel it. And that's what he did right away.
It's difficult time because even like a Stephanie McMahon who on TV is a heel, even within the show, she'll make an announcement about the all-women pay-per-view Evolution. So it's really hard to buy in, especially on the same show where you're booing her. She's making an announcement to get you.
Yeah, and I think Stephanie may be an unfair example because she has to serve as a corporate officer in the WWE, and she has to do certain things. So does Triple H. So he has to go out there and do certain things. They've also created this Connor's Cure, which is fantastic.
Yes.
And they have to be the face of that program. To me, I think that would be an exception.
John, if you had the opportunity to get back in the ring again, is there anybody on the shows right now that you could see yourself working with?
It's a great question. A couple of years ago, when Cody Rhodes was there, I kind of want to do something with Cody just because I like Cody. I thought he was okay. Now I'd never go on the, I would not do anything probably outside of WWE, but when you talk about WWE, there's some guys that are just some fantastic workers. I tag team with Randy's dad, Bob Orton. I've always wanted to have a program with Randy. I got to fulfill nearly all the dreams I had. When into my career, I got to do a program with Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho, and those are the last two I really didn't get to do a program with. But of the current generation, there's a lot of great stars out there. I mean, I can imagine the APA or the Dudleys versus Sheamus and Cesaro. I mean, I think that'd be a lot of fun.
That would be very stiff.
You ain't kidding. It would be. Good Lord.
Is there, because we every time you come on, we talk a lot about old school wrestling and old school heels. Is there a heel that you feel is like just the best all-time heel?
Oh yeah, I think Piper. Piper to me was the greatest heel of all time. Most likely. I think now, that being said, in mainstream, I think Fit Finlay was the best heel I've ever seen. And there was no question about that. Fit Finlay, when he was in Europe, 20-something straight years in the same towns, the same territory, and he was still the top guy when he left. I don't think people realize how good Fit Finlay was. He was the best heel and probably the best worker I've ever seen.
John, a lot of the feedback that we get from fans on the show, and obviously this is a die-hard wrestling fan show, is they're very frustrated with the product. And we get people that call into the show and they want to know why, quote-unquote, Vince won't listen. Well, if you're Vince McMahon and you're sitting around your board table and you deal with your merchandising and that's up and your stock is up and everything is through the roof, why would Vince listen to the fan these days over the actual numbers? So I guess my question for you is, do you think the WWE right now has their finger on the pulse of what the fan wants?
I think you look at the numbers, and I think the numbers say that they probably do. And I don't know that for sure about the average fan, because the feedback you get is skewed. The people that give you feedback are your hardcore fans, and they're the ones that are traditionally going to be unhappy with the product. They have a platform with Twitter and that they didn't have before. I think the average fan that you want is the father who brings his boys or his girls to watch the show. And I think that's more truly indicative of the huge broad base of fans out there. It's just hard to get feedback from them. And so to me, I think, look, the same thing was said about Vince back in the 90s. And again, people will say I'm towing the company line. I don't know what the company line is, but the same thing was said then, that Vince was out of touch. And from there, it went from a publicly traded company. It's worth $6.5 billion right now.
Crazy.
He's doing something right.
With all the success that you've had outside the ring and everything that you're doing, you're probably busier than you've ever been outside the world of wrestling. Will you think you always will be perceived as a pro wrestler? Do you feel like when you're on a show or people are having a conversation with you that it always goes back to pro wrestling?
Yeah, and I hope so. Like I'm not running from it. I think it's great. When I was a kid, my youngest memory is watching the Von Erich boys debut along with Fritz with my grandfather, wanting to be a pro wrestler, and I got to fill my dream, and I'm not running from that now. I think it's pretty cool that I could be in this business, and I certainly don't run from it. I'm very proud of what the business has become.
John, what is your goal right now outside of the pro wrestling business? You're working with Fox. I see you on Fox and Friends a lot, Bulls and Bears. What's the new goal for you?
I'm setting up a company right now, predictive analysis type company, will combine with AI with some pretty good guys who are good at predictive analysis, trying to dictate market trends, sports trends, business trends, equity trends. Our future is to get into equities, and I've spent a lot of time forming this company. Other than that, I've got an idea for a global base for a lot of charities that use sport around the globe. I've been a global ambassador for Beyond Sport for years. I visit a lot of charities around the world that work with at-risk kids. There's a real need for a global body that can arrange coaches sharing information, and also so people don't have to recreate the wheel. It'd be a nonprofit. I would do it for free for myself, but I think it's something that's very important for these programs that are working with some of the most at-risk kids in the world around the globe.
You always talk about sports, and I know you're involved in a lot of charities and the youth when it comes to sports. How important is sports around the world, and how much, like you said, it can make a difference if done the right way? How important is that?
I was in India about 6 months ago. I was visiting a lot of projects in the slums, and I saw Hindi and Christian and Muslim girls playing soccer together. And you don't see that. You don't see Muslim girls traditionally playing any sports. It's kind of taboo to their religion. But there's a wonderful program called Magic Bus that has united all these groups through sport. And these people are going to grow up not hating each other. These people are going to grow up loving each other because of sport. I think sport is transformative in that way. See, that's one of the reasons why I wouldn't take WWE away from Saudi Arabia. And people are saying, they're just trying to make money. They're a business. They should try to make money. But to me, the greater good here is you go over there and you show people that it's okay to be from different backgrounds. It's okay to be a woman and compete. They're not competing in Saudi Arabia yet. I think they will. And I think this is a right step forward. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why it's important that sport changes the world, man. Once you line up beside somebody in sport, you don't care what color they are, what ethnicity they are, what orientation they are. It doesn't matter.
John, how's the things going with your rugby team?
Rugby team's going good. I'm out of the rugby market in New York. I'm still working with a lot of rugby programs around the globe. I work with Play Rugby USA here in New York City. Mark Griffin has founded a wonderful program. 5,000 kids in inner city New York City are doing incredible programs here. I was just at visiting Beat the Streets, an incredible program by Mike Novogratz, a hedge fund billionaire. He started up this wrestling program, and it's just fantastic what he's doing with kids.
John, it's always a pleasure having you on the show. I think you opened up a lot of fans' eyes and make them look at what's going on here with Crown Jewel in a bit of a different way. We don't have answers, but at least there's some facts here that we can fall back on when thinking about what's going to be taking place in Saudi in November.
Yeah, and the thing is not going away. This deal with Saudi Arabia is going to be a bigger deal, not for WWE. I think WWE is this will come and go. It's not going to be a big deal. But I think for the macroeconomic problems that we're going to have coming out of this with oil prices. I mean, oil prices have pretty much preceded every recession, every bull market. We're at $71 right now. This could go to $100 if we start putting sanctions on Saudi Arabia and they fight back, which could happen. I mean, it looks like they're going to just kind of pass the blame off and make up a story, and people are going to go with that. But to me, I think the bigger issue is what happens in that entire region.
John, the last question I have for you, and I think it's probably the most important thing that I could ask you, and I've always wondered about this. When you used to do that fall away slam, just how heavy was Devon?
Oh, my goodness. Are you kidding me? I walk with a limp to this day. My God, the last time I saw something that big, it had ropes on it. It was in the freaking Macy's Day Parade. I'll tell you, I dropped an O-ring one time. It's unbelievable. That man, I'm telling you the truth. This is the God's honest truth. Devon weighs right around 902 pounds. That's the truth. I saw him get on a scale one time. It said 902. Devon is the largest man in the world.
JBL, John Layfield. John, thank you so much for the time today. We really appreciate it.
Always great visiting with you, gentlemen.